that brings us to the end of the meeting, but it's... Oh, sorry. My apologies. I'm now going to hand over to Dame Fran Wild, who's waiting patiently in the wings. And I'm really sorry, Fran, that you couldn't be here to join us. But we're looking forward to your presentation, and I'm sure you'll be able to take questions from councillors as well. Thank you. James,
I do apologise for not being there in person, but my plane was cancelled when I got to the airport. They must have known where I was going. I shouldn't say that. I was really looking forward to seeing you all. So because we're all so used to Zoom these days, we thought we'd give this a trial. I was asked to just provide for you in a formal context what the Remuneration Authority actually does and how local government remuneration is set, because there seems to be a lot of confusion about it. So we have the overheads. So Mia, is somebody going to operate that?
Yes, they will.
Excellent.
You just tell us when to change the page.
I will do that. So we can move on to the next slide, please. So this is, first of all, I'm going to tell you about what we actually have to do. And overall, we take care of remuneration for all of local government elected members, not for employed staff, for the judiciary, for all members of parliament, including ministers, etc., and for quite a large group of independent statutory officers, and they would include people who have to have normally independent thinking and can make decisions maybe without going back to a minister. So in terms of local government, the rest of the slide talks about you. We are allowed to, in terms of determining your fix scales, ranges, different forms, rules for application, reimbursement of expenses, and differentiation between different people or equivalent positions. And sometimes I have to say finding equivalence is very difficult, but we do our best. So can we just flick over to the next one and just the first bullet point? Okay, so there are some mandatory criteria that we have under law, and we have to do this. And the first one is minimising the potential behaviour. So that might be saying, well, we're going to pay local government people huge amount of money for driving their cars to work, and so everybody thinks, oh, that's useful, I'll top up my budget by driving my car to work all the time. Or we're not going to pay people very much at all, and then nobody runs for anything. So, you know, we have to think about the implications of what we do in terms of people's behaviour. Okay, the next bullet point is to, if we can, achieve relativity with other levels of remuneration. That's pretty hard because the only other jobs like local government are really members of parliament. They are all very full-time. And so when we looked at this, we did a very significant review of local government a couple of years ago. We actually said we will put a stake in the ground at a cabinet minister's pay, and that will be the top, if you want, of the local government scale, which doesn't mean to say everybody in local government gets paid like a cabinet minister is. Okay, next. We also have to be fair to you all and to ratepayers, and these are specified in the law. So every time we do something, we have to say, is that going to put too much of a big an impost on ratepayers, or in the case of if it's MPs, on taxpayers? And is it also fair to the people who we're looking after there? Next one is a really important one, and this drove our part of our review 2 or 3 years ago. We felt that local government pay had slipped a bit in many areas, and we knew that in particular that whole kind of issue of having older retired people was still quite prevalent in some councils, and we wanted to make it possible for younger people to come in, and if possible more women, people with families, that sort of thing. And we understand that is still very difficult, and we will be keeping on looking at that in future years to make sure that people can actually go into local government if they wish to. And the last one is to take account of countervailing economic conditions, which nobody ever thought we'd be in, but we are now with COVID. Well, actually, we're not, interesting enough. We've come out of it probably better than we all thought, but certainly a year ago, we had no idea what was going to happen to the economy, whether it was going to completely tank or not. So there was a bit of a hold put on everything then. Okay, so next slide. And by the way, I think you'll all have these slides. So this is what we do. Once a year, we do what's called a determination, and that sets, we decide the actual numbers for mayors, regional council chairs, and actually, I'm not sure whether the council should be in there. No, community boards, Auckland local boards, and that's it. And everybody else comes out of the pool. So we go on to the next one. I'll talk about the pool in a minute. I'll talk about it now, actually. We provide a pool for each council, and that is decided by what we have determined is the size of the work that the council does, the whole council. It's nothing to do with how many councillors there are. It is actually the size of your collective job. And we did rearrange, when we did our review a couple of years ago, quite a lot of the councillor remuneration to reflect that. So some people were held, some people, because they were overweight, some councils went up quite a lot. So one example was Far North District Council, which had been paid very poorly for the size of the job they do. So they've gone up quite a lot. Whereas other ones have been held. You've been held. I think Palmerston North was another one that's been held. So out of that remuneration pool, which is a fixed amount, it's, $100, you decide that, or any council decides that if they've got 10 councillors, they can either get $10 each, or somebody can get more than that if they're a chair of a committee, for example. So we do actually stipulate one thing with the pool, and that is a minimum amount for a councillor on each council. And that's really important. So you can't go below that. But apart from that, you can make recommendations to us about any of your positions and what they should be paid. I need to say here, this is not the council deciding its own pay, because you can only decide within the pool we give you. So we decide that pool, not you. And I'm always very open about that. And I say to all the councillors, I will defend your pay. You don't have to defend your pay publicly. I will do that because it's us that set it. We also do the reimbursement allowances and hearing fees, and you know what that involves, travel, kilometre allowances, ICT allowance, and more recently we've put in a childcare allowance. Okay, what's our next one? Yes, you can provide your mayor or chair with a car, a vehicle, and that's counted in their total remuneration, by the way. The other thing I think is important to say is that all elected members do have to be paid what we say. You can't change, a council can't decide that they actually don't want to pay somebody that much. You have to be paid what we say. And that keeps it completely out of your scope. Okay, next slide. So this is the pool which I just talked about, stupidly, ahead of time. So it is the size, not the number of councillors, as I said. Really important issue, that. And we've created an index for territorial authorities and another one for regional councils. And we based that, we did quite a lot of work on this with significant input from local government. We had a little panel we put together and had lots of discussion. In the end, these were the factors we used to look at size index, population, OPEX, assets, and we put in socio-economic deprivation because we felt that councils with low socioeconomic populations probably have quite a lot more work to do, although somebody did say that actually it's the higher ones that cause you the most trouble, but I can't comment on that. So as I said, this provides the total amount that must be paid and the minimum per councillor. Other than that, you can make any recommendations you want, and we generally will put your recommendation in that determination. So you do have to decide what is your base rem for a councillor with no additional responsibilities, and most councils make that a bit higher than the minimum amount, but not all of them, but most of them do. So roles with other responsibilities, deputy mayor, committee chairs, portfolios, there's a variety of different roles now, require you to write that out, have a vote on it, and include the proposed remuneration. So that's really important, because then it's all clear, it's in the public, and it's transparent. You send your proposals to us, and we consider your proposals for inclusion, and generally we include them. But we've got a get out of jail free, if you want, card on that one. If we think something's funny going on in a council, we can go back to them and say, why did you decide this or that? And that would be pretty rare. Most of them are doing this reasonably well. So the other thing about the governance pool is that it must be fully allocated. You can't decide to pay yourselves less. And I think this is very important for ratepayers who think you get paid too much. You can blame the Remuneration Authority for that, because the law is you must pay what we allocate, and the whole pool needs to be allocated. And then just a reminder that this does not apply to the mayors or the regional council chairs or Auckland local board members or community board members who are paid differently. We decide their pay. So just lastly, going on to Christchurch, you are the second biggest, well, they're not even a TA council, they're a unitary council, you're a territorial authority. You are the biggest territorial authority in the country by a long way, and you've got the highest number of councillors outside of Auckland as well. So you're a big council in every sense of the word. And the remuneration that you get reflects your size relative to other countries around the whole, other councils around the whole country. And some of them are quite small, frankly. We have assessed your councillor positions as full-time roles. We went into that quite deeply too in our review, and we said some councils are full-time, some are approximately half, some are quite part-time. We actually know that in any council that's assessed that way, there will be people who don't work as hard as other people. We can't actually pay for performance. So if you have councillors that are not working as hard as others, then they have to be looked after by the election. We that's what democracy is for. We can't help that. We don't do performance pay. Community board rem is a very difficult issue for us. We have looked into it a couple of times, and there's some papers on our website, and in fact, I think your councillor's got them too. You might want to read our report on community boards. It is a real mixed bag, so difficult that every community board practically in the country, and there are hundreds of them, is completely different. So many of them represent a lot of people, some of them represent only a few people, some of them cost their ratepayers a lot of money, some cost nothing much at all, some have many delegations, some have very few delegations. So we have always found community boards very different. We were going to construct a size index for community boards, but we have simply been unable to do that. In fact, we've said to the Local Government Commission, you need to make some decisions about community boards and what they do. For example, in Christchurch, we can see you're kind of edging towards the Auckland local board position, but you're not a unitary council, so you can't have local boards. But yours are bigger than most of the others around the country, but we've got no way of comparing your community boards with others because everyone is so different. A scale wouldn't work. The other thing that's worth adding is that your community boards did, I think, not all of them maybe, but there was some extra payment for increased workload from the earthquake sequence, and we've just left that in there. So we have just recently, today actually, that's not recent, it's like current, gazetted this year's determination. Here it is, I'm holding it up. Your council has it too, we sent it to you. And you're welcome to read it. And I think the bad news for you all is that you're not getting any pay increase this year. But your community boards, the big ones, are going to get 1% pay increase, and Banks Peninsula is getting 1.5%. So what we've done with the determination this year is we've tried to bring up the bottom end of local government a bit, and we've just left the top end where it is. We can't keep doing that forever, and I think next year we'll probably be back to a regular round. And I have to say, for my part, I think that local government is certainly not overpaid for what local government does, and we're very conscious of that. But in the COVID environment, we've just been a bit cautious. So that's the presentation. Mayor Dalzell, if you want questions, happy to answer any questions.
Well, look, thank you very much. That was a very comprehensive presentation, and I think it's probably helped explain things to the wider public because it's still being live streamed, and so that's going to be very useful to be able to refer back to this as well. Aaron.
Yeah, it's a question that one of my fellow councillors raised when he first became a councillor, which was Mike Davidson, so I'll give him the credit, because some people who consider running for council asked this as well, is around KiwiSaver. Has there been any consideration given to that in the whole process?
There has been a lot, and we would love to do that, but unfortunately we're unable to do that. We have actually suggested to Local Government New Zealand that this should be one of their big lobbying issues with the government, because we have to administer people's positions as they are determined by central government, and for tax purposes, local government are actually independent contractors. Yeah. So KiwiSaver doesn't apply, which is terrible because some of you are in there full time for some years, and you should be able to get KiwiSaver in our view, but we can't do that.
Yeah, Aaron.
Okay, thanks for that, Fran. And the other one is around the ACC charges for being a city councillor. Can you just let ACC know it's not a very dangerous job?
Same as being an independent contractor. I pay ACC. Actually, maybe mine is dangerous because when I go and talk to council, sometimes, I think, oops, but no, that's a joke. You probably pay the same as I do, which I consider to be inordinately high for my very safe role into physical safety, but that's how it is. We can't, again, determine that.
I have a slightly different view on ACC. I think that it covers more than work-related
that's true.
Injuries, so it's a good system.
That's true.
But anyway, Mike.
Thank you. Has there been any thought about the deputy chairs of community boards and the room they're on, which is the same as actual members when they're doing more work?
Well, the problem is, again, that some will do more work and some won't. And what we would like to have done was do a pool system so each community board could decide it. But honestly, as I said, it was just too hard working out the relativities between community boards. And in the end, we just gave up. It's been the only thing in this role that's actually defeated me has been community boards. So yes, we thought about it, but I don't think we could assess from Wellington which deputy is doing so much more work, because some of them don't.
Is there any potential for the Remuneration Authority to feed into the future for local government review? Because I just wonder whether that's in terms of the context of some of the conversations they're going to be having about roles and functions, and that I can see that perhaps some broadening of community boards may become inevitable in terms of some of the future conversations.
Yes, there is potential. We actually they want to talk with us, and we've got an appointment at some stage, and we've told them we will send them through all the information. Because what happens is that we have these weird kind of structures that evolve over the years, and the pointy end of it always ends up as remuneration. So we get the pointy end, but we can't change the structure. We can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So we know what the issues are, and so we're pushing back now and saying to the people who can decide that kind of structure, remember, here are all the issues that we have actually come across. And we've got spreadsheets for Africa on this, honestly, on, you know, comparisons, particularly between different community boards.
The chief executive has a question for you.
Good afternoon, Dame Fran.
Right.
It's a completely different subject, and that's in relation to the consideration of the responsibility that elected members have as shareholders of major companies, and recognising the Three Waters reform and the potential of future companies being created. At the moment, those considerations you take don't appear to take that into consideration, and it's done on OPEX and assets, yet there are real responsibilities that elected members have as shareholders of companies.
Yes, assets was meant to cover all the assets. We talked a lot about this when we were doing it. And look, honestly, any formula you have is going to be probably, I was going to say 80-20, but 60-40. You're never going to get a perfect formula because every council is different. And their ownership structures are different, but the assets are meant to take into account all of the assets the council has. We have been asked, by the way, what will happen when or if water leaves. And I've said, well, if that affects the calculation, REM might change, but that will be, we can't really forecast what will happen at this stage. It's too early for that,
Yeah,
since nobody knows what's going to happen.
I think 2024 is the sort of planned implementation date, so that's still some time away. Are there any other?
As they might say, a little bit of water to go under the bridge.
Oh, you've just stolen my line. Yeah, no, that's right. Are there any other questions for Dame Fran? No, look, thank you very much for making the presentation. I'm sorry you can't join us for lunch. But
Me too. I wanted to talk with you.
We're going to have it anyway because we're going to farewell one of our councillors. So we'll share lunch with him instead. But
Hi,
thank
Fran.
you. But do let us know when you have an opportunity to come back. And I guess just to formalise the presentation, if I could formally thank you and move that we thank you for the presentation and on determining local government elected members' remuneration. And seconded by Mike. So
Thank you.
I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. And perhaps if we could thank Dame Fran for making the time available. Sorry about your
Sorry,
flight.
I'm not there.
And we'll see you next time in person.
Yep, I'll try and make it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.